Hello, everybody. This is Michael Whitehouse. I am the chairman of Conference 21. This is our weekly round table. The purpose of this is that we have many fantastic speakers. So far, 44 who are approved for our May event. And I like to show them off. So then you're like, what's Conference 21 about? You can see some of these really cool people. And we have a diverse group of people from different backgrounds. So I love the idea of bringing people together to talk about, share their different ideas. So before we get to introducing Rodney and Steve, there's a couple of quick announcements while everyone gets online. First, speaker applications are still open until April 15th. So if you're interested in being a speaker, don't dawdle. You have 1 week. Time is running out. But if you run out of time, then there will be another Conference 21 in August. You can apply for that one. Also, since I'm running this, I'm going to promote my own thing first. Do a daily motivational podcast at morningmotivation.fun. It is free. It is fun. It's 2 to 5 minutes of upbeat energy, a bit of music behind it. Get you fired up, get your head going to start the day. And you can sign up, get that in your email every single morning at morningmotivation.fun. All right, so that's enough about me. Let us meet our guests. Our guests today are Rodney Burris and Steve Friedland. We'll start with Rodney because he's at the top of the screen. So Rodney, tell us a little about yourself.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for hosting this platform, having great conversations with great people. My name is Rodney C. Burris. I'm a leadership development trainer. And in a nutshell, what that means is how in the world do we level up our staff without firing everybody, right? Post-COVID-19 America, and actually internationally, we have situations where we're trying to adjust to this new normal. And I have been in the professional development space for a lot of years. And what I've realized is that the key to professional development, no matter what kind of soft skill or hard skill or technical skill we're focused on, it literally relates to leadership. Leadership in a nutshell is influence, and influence starts with the self. So we encompass all of that in the workshops and trainings that we do. It's very budget friendly and it's a lot of fun. So that's what I do.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Steve, what about you?
Yeah, how do I follow that up? This guy's the real deal. So Steve Friedland, spent about 30 years in the corporate world. I'm an analytic by trade. Don't hold it against me. I'm an actuary, investment guy. A couple of years ago, went off on my own, trying to find where my niche was, assuming I would do analytical consulting. Then somebody called me and said, hey, do you do executive coaching? I said, yes. And then I Googled, what is executive coaching? Yeah. It sort of brought me down a path ultimately to, I consider myself now a catalyst for community. I love building community wherever that is. I did it in the Fortune 500 world, did it in nonprofits. I've done it in small businesses. And so that's really what my business is built around, is helping, whether it's communities, helping organizations, people develop community, start building community and actually growing their businesses through a community mindset. Sort of putting the collective we ahead of the individual I, and why that's good for business. So I consider myself a catalyst for community.
That's awesome. Yep. All right. So I'm not going to make you, Steve, not going to make you follow Rodney again. So I'll have you lead off with our first topic.
Thank you.
And so your topic today is how living by default can be a stumbling block. So share. And if those of you who haven't seen the show before, Steve's going to introduce this topic a bit, and then we're going to kick it around for a few minutes and see where it goes. So,
it's one of the interesting things that I've discovered, as being a community builder, is so many of us have these defaults, whether that's in our individual lives. What kind of toothpaste do we use? Well, it's probably the kind that your parents used. What do we believe? What sports team do we root for? All of these things are defaults in our lives that we've just sort of accepted. And those are, benign things that don't really matter, but you start getting into things like belief systems, how you approach the world, whether it's, any posture towards systemic issues. We just sort of have these bents that are just the defaults. And when we live our lives, when we get into business, these become huge stumbling blocks for us. Especially when it turns out that as we get older, we learn that maybe I'm not really aligned with that belief system. Maybe I'm not really aligned to that. And we start having this cognitive dissonance in our lives and in our minds where we're just like, this doesn't make sense. I don't really believe that, even though I'm supposed to, or I should, or my whole family does, or all the relationships I have. We have default friendships because they're the people that we went to high school with just by random chance. Our family are just default relationships. Our coworkers are default relationships, and sometimes that's really good, but sometimes it just gets in the way, and we start getting this skewed sense of what we have control over and what we don't have control over. And so, part of the message about being a community builder, and part of it about living our most fulfilling life, and part of it about having the business that we want to have, not that we should have, is about replacing these defaults with intentionality. And so I really try to encourage people to challenge yourself. What are those things in your life, in your business, in your leadership that are just defaults? They're just there because you never really thought about it. You just sort of accepted it for what it is. So that is kind of the kick off the conversation. That is really the key point of that. So I don't know what you guys think about that whole default thing, but that was an issue for me for sure.
I think it's awesome, man. So first of all, I think it ties beautifully in with what you do for a living, working in the space of getting organizations to view themselves as a community, and maybe an ever expansive, community, right? More and more and more is included in my circle. There's an artist, musician that came out with a song some years ago called Classic Man. And in his album project, he's talking with his uncle. His uncle says something similar about your community being an expanding idea. So it's not just me and this selfish kind of idea. And so the way he described it, Steve, was some men draw their circle of influence around themselves, right? Some around their families, some around their neighborhood or community, some around their city or their people. But the greatest men, like your uncle, right? So the uncle's talking, of course, he throws accolades to himself. He says, we draw our circle around the circumference of the entire globe. And I thought that was powerful, right? Mike, while Steve was talking, it made me want to give you some kudos because I don't even remember how I came across what you're doing with Conference 21. Some way somebody was like, Rodney, you should be a part of it. I don't know if you intentionally matched up the guest or however, but Steve, a major part of my work is getting organizations, teacher teams, staffs, university students, sports teams, whatever, to embrace this idea that it's a oneness, right? So one of my nerd moments, don't judge me, guys.
You're talking to an actuary. I don't think you have to worry about nerd moments.
Awesome.
My background's running sci-fi conventions.
You're in good company here, Rodney. I think you're okay.
So the etymology of the word community shares the etymology with the word communication. And so that's the angle that I approach this with. Communication can be broken down into three portions, right? So you have the co in the beginning. Well, commune is really the root word, right? And so that means shared, right? But commune can be broken down into co and une, which literally is with oneness, right? There's a togetherness that's embedded in the idea. Ation is the process of. So communication only happens in any process, right? If that process is a song or text or argument or whatever it is, verbal, nonverbal, at the end of the process, are we together around one idea? Community is that, right? Community is we are together around a single sense of who the self is, even with our differences. And so, Steve, I don't know, maybe Mike kind of masterminded bringing us together. I would love to explore some sort of collaborative project with you and just kind of keep that momentum going. I love what you're doing out here. I love how you approach it. And kudos to you, Mike, for kind of throwing this whole thing together, man.
Yep. Well, and so in honesty, so I believe you came in because our speaker announcement went out to the Black Speaker Network.
Yes,
which I have no direct connection to and have no idea how it got there. I'm pretty sure I was speaking with someone. I mentioned, they said, "Oh, I'm part of the Black Speakers Network. I'll share it there." I vaguely recall that happening. I have no idea who did it. But if you're watching, let me know because thank you. Yeah, we had a number of people sign up, and then the way these get put together, is a highly scientific process. I send out the form to all the speakers. I then fill in the dates in the orders the form comes back. So the two of you said April 9th was good, and that's ended up on April 9th. But what I find is there's so many serendipitous connections that occur when people come together, which is what community is about. I could take any two speakers, put them on screen together. Now the chance they're both like community based, that thing you talk about is
crazy.
is a little crazier, but there's always something. I remember an interesting statistic is a puzzle that you can use to kind of give the idea of how crazy statistics is, which is, I don't know if you ever heard this, how many people do you need to get in a room to have a 50% chance that two of them have the same birthday?
21.
How many? 21?
Yeah. I think it's 21, right?
Yeah, it's like 21 or 26. It's some really small number.
Wow.
Because it's not now. It's much higher if it's a particular day. If it's like someone has July 1st, but if just two of them match, it takes far fewer because each one can match any of the others, and the same thing happens. And that's really what I built Conference 21 around, is bringing together all these different people. And I don't, I basically look and say, do they know what they're talking about, and are they passionate about it? Yes, and can they express themselves well? Good.
Yes.
Welcome aboard. Come on in. And then put them together, and amazing things happen.
I don't believe in coincidences, man. And so I think that's exactly what we should be doing. And I never knew that whole 21 birthday, dynamic. So I am going everywhere around the world. I'm like, you guys want to know something? How many birthdays?
Well, if you have a group of 20 people, 25 people, whatever that is, have them share their birthdays, and there's a 50-50 shot that there's going to be a shared birthday, which is crazy.
There and then. That's really awesome.
I do that networking workshops too. When I teach a networking workshop, and I'll have 5, 10 people. I think I had 5 at the last one I did this at, and I'll ask someone in the audience, who are you looking to meet? What, and not necessarily by name, but what type of person you're looking to meet? Realtors, you're looking to meet, financial advisors, whatever. Who are you looking to connect with? And they'll get up and they'll say something, and then I'll say, okay, who knows the person they're looking to meet?
Right.
And 2, 3, 4 people like, oh yeah, I got one, or I am that person, or this, and I don't need 1,000 people in the room to do that. I can do it with 5 or 6 because there's so many connections, and we just don't talk to each other, so we don't.
That levels up the mingler, right? That levels up the mixer, right? Because so the mixer is normally, I sit around awkwardly with my little cocktail, right?
Yeah.
the 90-degree half arm stance, right? And I awkwardly smile at random jokes that I kind of get but kind of don't care about. But with Michael, what you're talking about, all of a sudden takes the energy in that room. So I believe in this multiplicity effect, kind of like as a way of life, right? And I love when I explain to groups that we can take the same components that we already have, the same resources, we don't have to be all of a sudden be all millionaires or whatever it is, but simply being who we are with the right kind of like energy and intentionality behind it. We can take that 3 and that 3, instead of just getting 6, we have 9. That 4 and 4, instead of just getting 8, we have 16, right? It's this synergy that's embedded in what we do when we use it with intentionality and goodwill, as opposed to just kind of have this additive cumulative effect, which works, but it gets you, but it's more effort, you know what I mean? And so, I think that's an awesome way to run. I don't, as much as I love people and as extroverted as I am, mixers are awkward, and it's almost as if they're structured to be so, right? You gotta go, you got your business cards that nobody ever is going to look at again, and I forgot your name as soon as you told me, and like, let's do what Michael did, right? Let's take it on and let's level this thing up, man, in a very intentional way. I love that. I think
mixers are the worst. I mean, I'm an introvert, by trade. I'm an actuary by trade, and so they're the worst. I mean, like, I love talking to individual people one-on-one. Like, I love these kinds of conversations when it feels like, okay, there's something to talk about. When you're just going to go and it's a mixer thing, and it's like, hey, how many kids do you have? I don't care, but how many do you have? 'Cause I don't know what else to ask. Oh, do you have a dog too? That's crazy. Wow, isn't that crazy? And I'm just like, this is like, for me, a lot of people love that stuff. So honestly, I know a lot of people that they love that stuff. They feel known. They like to know people in that way. So I think it's just a personality thing. But I'm the guy that walks out of the conference like, and I've done this several times where I've either spoken or attended conferences, and the keynote person where says, all right, now we're going to stand up and everybody hold hands. Like, I go out the door, like I leave, like that's it. And I think I literally do. I don't say that figuratively, like literally, like I'm out. Hey, we're all going to break into small groups of 4 people, and if there's a specific topic, great.
Right.
Some people love that. I think that's the key to any kind of speaking or whatever is how do you engage with different people in your audience?
Yes.
Recognizing that some people love that, some people don't. How can you put a mixer together or any kind of networking event where it caters to all people? Because otherwise you're just going to attract all of the same kind of people and you're missing out on a whole group of people that otherwise would engage.
It reminds me of pep rallies, man. So you get together and everybody's like, what do we want? When do we want it? And that energy is massive. And you go to the conferences and it's just, oh my God, and the things and the events and the speakers. But if there is not a way to like funnel that energy, it just dissipates.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's just revving it all up for it to kind of just go out into that. And people leave and there's no actionable next steps. There's no simple things like SMART goals connected to it. And so what I literally do in my leadership development trainings, right, is whatever type of module or angle or theme, because I got a bunch of quirky little stuff and stuff about inclusive leadership and, you know, the 5 C's of stakeholders and like all of the quirky stuff. Whatever it is, I intentionally take a bit of what we're talking about and I say, now with this idea and this strategy, who's going to do what, when, where? Sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's like a work project. Sometimes it's literally something that's a part of their strategic planning process. But whatever it is, we have to take the feel good because, and Steve, you probably know all about this, you know, when we're there in the space with them, people get a little braver. They speak up a little bit more, you know, like, well, like Steve said, you know, I never liked you anyway, you know, like, you know, they take those opportunities, right? But then we leave and we go on about our business, you know, living our lives, and they have to go back to work on Monday and engaging the same folks. So literally giving them the opportunity now that everybody's on the same page and everybody's kind of have this singularity of understanding, right? Which I call communication, like actual communication, this singular understanding. How do we then build on it? And it is something that I feel uniquely adept to do, to bring out. I have used all sorts of hip hop lyrics to do this. I can use, you know, religious or philosophical references. I can talk about the brain being in theta state versus an alpha state, and, you know, neurons that fire together, like whatever I got to do, right? If I could talk about, I went surfing once in Costa Rica. Some trip I was speaking at an event out there, and one of the things they had us do was, you know, go out on the waves. I got beat up so bad out there, so I couldn't turn my board around at the time. I couldn't balance, but I used those kind of experiences to kind of convey like whatever it takes. Right? We got to talk about Star Wars. We got to talk about Legos. Whatever it is, right, to kind of get that messaging across so that we can build in this kind of synergistic way.
Yeah, and we got going back to what Steve was saying. Actually, both of you mentioned you don't like mixers. So I'm going to send you both a copy of the digital copy of my book, Guy Knows a Guy, which folks at home can find. Where'd my link go? There it is at book.guyknowsaguy.com. But one of the things I talk about in the book, because, you know, if you have a chance to pick up your book, you got to take it.
That's right.
Yeah, one of the things I talk about in it is that the best goal to go into a mixer environment with is the goal of helping other people. Because if everyone goes to take, then everyone's going to be, you know, grabbing. There's nothing to grab. But everyone goes to give, then you know, you help each other. But it becomes a game. You know, you meet someone, you're like, hey, you need something. I'm going to find out what it is, and then I introduce you to someone who can do it. And in the course of that, you learn a lot about them and what they can offer and what they might need and how you might help them and if they might potentially be a client or a prospect or someone to refer or whatever. But there's no pressure because you're not trying to sell yourself.
Yeah.
You're just trying to figure out, hey, what do you need? Yep. Yeah. And
knows the guy.
Yep. Yeah. And it's totally a game to me. You know, it's like, what do you need? Okay. Do I know someone? Yes, I do. Okay. Let me find that person. Let me get their number for you. Here you go. Or let me send a Facebook message and connect you together or whatever it is. And now I feel pretty cool because I just connected somebody. And they think I'm awesome because I just spent all our time together solving one of their problems. And I now know what their problems are because it is possible the solution to their problem is this guy. So,
that's right.
As opposed to being like, let me tell you everything I can do. Now, do any of your problems match that?
I know, like that feels so. That sounds a lot like Steve's community idea. Like, I heard Steve, this organization, one of my clients, they use the phrase common unity, right? And they call themselves a common unity, and they say it all the time, right? And so now I can't even think about the word community,
right,
without that embedded. Is that something that you guys throw around? Is that a part of the jargon of the?
I've heard that. I don't use that. I don't use common unity a lot, but it just a lot of the collective we sort of thing is a lot of the language that we use. I've been to Rwanda a few times, and they use the phrase Muganda, which is really a community-based thing, which is a principle that I just love. But I think to your point about kind of the givers and the takers, I think one thing to keep in mind for folks out there too is there's a lot of givers, or there's a lot of takers and there's a lot of givers. But I think finding that mutual beneficial sort of situation is a pretty important thing, because I think as somebody who is generally a universal taker, I guess, or giver, whichever way you want to look at it, I'm usually the one listening, right? I'm usually the one listening to people talk about it. I try to solve their problem, and that's all well and good, but it becomes a trap a little bit. And I think this is one area of intentionality that I've had to overcome in my life, to move from default to intentionality, which is this, where somebody will sit there and talk to me, and literally I've had somebody talk to me for 2 straight hours without me saying a word, and that was just sort of, at that point, that was me just testing them to see how long they could go. But because and then what they say is, they said, "Hey, we should get together again next week," and that was so much fun. And I'm saying, yeah, because you just talked about your favorite subject, and I just sat there because I either need to be given permission to speak, or I check out, or whatever. Like, this is clearly not going to be a relationship that's a two-sided thing. And so I think there's a place for listening, and there's a place
that's
for.
What you charge them.
Well, yeah, right, exactly. If I was paying, if they were paying me, I wouldn't have cared. But that is a thing, just for people to be aware of. There's a place to kind of share your stuff and do your thing. But those of us who tend to be listeners, we do that. We maybe make some progress and stuff, but we can actually become resentful in that. And so I want to encourage anybody that's out there that struggles with it, like I have in the past, where you just feel like it's always one side. And that's part of why I hate mixers, because you feel like you go and I don't need to tell everybody who I am and what I do. I just don't need to. If they want to know, I'm happy to share, but I don't need to do that. So I just sit there and listen. And it just feels like it's just a big contest of who's the most important and who's done the most. And people love talking to us because we just listen and ask questions, but eventually become resentful. And so I think that is a challenge for people like me that are more of the kind of just the listening ear. We're seen as a good listener, but if you're going to become resentful in that, be more intentional about finding a platform to share, and be more intentional about. I did a TED talk about peeps in your Jeep, and it was all about surrounding yourself with the right people. Because for me, I needed to kick some of those people out of my Jeep that were just takers, and I needed to surround myself with people. And I even told people that, I said, it's not personal, but here's the deal: I need to be around people that actually care what I think, not just are wanting to share what they think. And I've had that conversation with people. That's hard, but that's the intentionality I'm talking about, moving past the default where it says, well, this is my lot in life. I'm just sitting here stuck listening to people that I don't care about. Right. To being intentional and saying, no, these aren't healthy for me. So it's sorry, I went on a little bit of a tangent, but that's kind of how this all ties together. But I think that's just know yourself. Know yourself, what kind of people you need to be around, and then intentionally do it. Like, as far as I know, it's one trip around the world or on the planet. For us, let's live the kind of life and be with the kind of people that we want to be with.
I need to get the right kind of peeps in my Jeep. Number one. And then number two, man, listening to you, Steve, just now, it made me think. I attended, there's an organization in Baltimore called thread.org. Thread is one of my favorite organizations. I've done work with them for years. Their mission statement is very unique. They are on a goal to build relationships across lines of difference across all over Baltimore and then around the world. And I'm like, wow, relationships across lines of difference. One of the things that they've held in this endeavor was an event where they invited 1,000 people who didn't know each other from all over Baltimore. They had these 100 round tables, and they put 10 people to a table, right, in this big hotel space. And they mixed up like raffle style. Who'd you come in with? So now you're sitting with people that you don't know. They're not your age. They're not your gender. They're not whatever. So you're sitting and looking at this round table of people that you do not know. And to your point, Steve, about sharing that space, not dumping on somebody and learning how. One of the structures, and I'm sharing this, Michael, for any of our listeners, family, Conference 21 crew out there. This is a tool maybe that you guys may find helpful in your own circles, in your own walks of life. They did something called push-up, pull back, right? And so push-up, pull back was, if you're the type of person that in the space, you normally have phenomenal ideas and a lot of energy. Your name is Rodney C. Burris, and you look funny and got a big head, right? We need you to share that airspace. We need you to pull back with intention. And they kind of level setted that from the beginning. And then they said, however, if you're the type that normally is like, you're okay with the ideas being out there, you're okay with the conversation, and as long as it's not crazy or criminal, you're fine, you'll go along with it. We actually want to get the benefit of your voice. We need you to push up. And in the table, they kind of like commissioned us to reinforce, to re-encourage, to remind each other of push up, pull back, push up, pull back. It made that a safe space to do. And so I didn't get to talk a lot, but I got to learn a lot. You know, I always have great ideas. I always think that my idea is a good one. Like, sure. It'll be fine. No, we don't have.
If it wasn't, you'd have a different idea, right? If it wasn't a good idea, I'd change it.
I would have a new one. If the idea I had was bad, I would have a different idea. Right. So yeah, that idea of push up, pull back, and so many times in my workshops, especially the live sessions, but even I found myself over quarantine last year. I've been kind of doing it over Zoom. Right? Because so when we open up the microphones, unless I do a lot of engagement via the chat box, that kind of is an equalizer. But when we turn the mics on and let people jump in, push up, pull back. So anyway, if any of the C21 family think that's a great tool to use, I hope they run with it.
Yeah, it's a great concept. I may actually, if I can hold it in my head until May, I'll definitely bring it up. You know, I was an opening introduction, welcome sort of thing, explaining the platform. That'd be a great concept. And I've very much experienced that over the last probably a year or so, because I am certainly one who needs to pull back. I'm very good at talking, but doing things like this, like running the round table, where I'll bring on 1, 2, 3 people who are more accomplished than myself, and thus who people want to hear more than me. Bring them on, and then get out of the way. I may have ideas, but I have guests. Now I have my own podcast, which here's a link. I have my own podcast where I talk by myself and it's all mine. But then on my other podcast, it's an interview podcast, and it's about bringing in those guests. And I've realized over the last 6 months that exercise of bringing on smart people and then shutting up has made me a better, smarter, wiser. I'm more, my emotions are more balanced. My vision's clearer. Not my vision. My vision's the same. My vision of the future is clearer because I've listened to so many people and had to listen, because that's a format. You know, if I'm on here, blah, 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 and you guys are like, why are we here?
Right.
That no one's going to sign up
for get any more guests. Yeah.
So I need to shut up and listen. So it's been a very instructional, beneficial. And even when I was in sales, in the back before times, it's interesting because, you know, as a salesman, you don't share your political views, your religious views, and sometimes the prospect will say the dumbest things, and you just go, you've clearly given that a lot of thought. You don't want to agree, because if you agree, you can step into a trap. And
that's one way to look at it. You say that's the line, right? That's one way.
Right. That's I found myself in a Uber. I was in Houston a couple of weeks ago doing a conference. I'm getting an Uber to the site or something like that. This guy, he's from Chicago. He's a transplant to Houston. And so he's just giving me the run of the day, what's going on locally and why he got there from Chicago. And he goes into this whole political ideology and dealing with, you know, everything about guns and who should have voted for this person and how smart or idiotic this elected person is. And then he just got more and more relaxed. And listen, I can't say that I have the cleanest vernacular. There are times where I season my words kind of intentionally with some spice here and there. But that's an acquired taste, right? You kind of work your way into being that comfortable with people. This guy went full-blown sales. So I'm listening, and everything he's saying from an objective sense is offensive. Like, he doesn't know my ideology. I'm saying if I were to hear this guy talking about broccoli versus apples, right? I'm like, oh, I don't think the apples would like that. Like, as a vegetarian, right? As a meat eater. So yeah, man, just gotta be mindful of that stuff. Gee whiz.
But yeah, when you know you're gonna lose the sale if you have the wrong opinion, you get really good at poker facing, which is a great skill. And I learned this like before social media got really polarized. So as social media started to get really polarized, I'm like, wait a minute, I should be a salesman here too and shut up and listen. But because of that, I can now look at it. And I found that people who are further to my side than me, without revealing which side I'm on, further to my side than I am, and people who are on the other side, I sometimes find them equally disagreeable. But I now understand them. You know, I understand why people might be far to the left. I understand why people are far to the right. I understand why people are in the middle. And so once you get that, you're like, oh, they're not crazy. They're not monsters. They come from a different place. They get their information from a different source. Oh, and then, of course, what frustrates the heck out of me, having a marketing background, communications background, is seeing the people I agree with bungle the heck out of the message because they don't understand who their audience is. And so I'm like, no, stop. You're alienating your own. I've had people who I try to support them and they will alienate me because I'm trying to help. I'm the closest target. So they come after me and I'm like, whoa, I'm with you. And
I hate that.
Shoot that way.
Well, right. I think I'm always trying to convince people, try to take it one level up, right? You're like, okay, we can, you're right, you're left, you're this, you're that, whatever. But can we at least agree? Okay, what is our ultimate goal here? Like, let's take one level up, right? I mean, okay, school taxes. Should we fund the school? Should we not fund the school? Well, can we agree that we both want what's best for the community? If we can't agree there, let's keep going up until we find something we agree on, and then come back down. And so now you're just talking about tactics. Like we're talking about tactics, high tax, low tax, all of the issues. And I think then if you can bring it down where you're talking about the conversation about what's the best way to do it. Okay, now we're disagreeing on strategy, but I think, this polarized world is so much about right and wrong. And that's the level that discerns if we like somebody or not.
Yes.
Even though we might both be in the, looking for what's best for our society. And that's tough. It's tough to convince people of that. And that's the stuff that I get kind of short on because it's so exhausting. To try to get people to realize that you can disagree here, but still get along up here. That's tough.
I think that's great, man. Well, I make a lot of jokes about, I made the joke earlier about I'm going to tell everybody that there's 21 birthdays in a month and everybody has a birthday when you get here. Like, I always make jokes about I'm going to take that and go. The truth of the matter is there's probably one major reason why I'm successful as a leadership development trainer. And that reason is I have the benefit of honeybee syndrome, which is I go to this organization, this flower, this corporation, this nonprofit. And yes, I have a little bit of pollen info, best practice to drop off that I've acquired kind of just wherever. And it might be one or two, but they have a few themselves, right? And so then I collect those. And by the time I go to the next one, it's this like interchange that's going on. One of the things that I'm absolutely going to share in my space, one, Mike's mixer idea, which I thought was great. Who knows a guy that knows a guy? Maybe we can solve that in the room. I love that, right? But then also, Steve, your whole idea about, wait. We're probably getting stuck in the weeds, right? Let's go to the top of the grass level, right? Let's kind of go to the shrub, to the bush level. Let's kind of get on the tree, right? Let's get to the canopy, because at some point we're probably saying the same thing. And we're probably using the same words with different connotation. And so because we think that I hear you said lemon, I say lemon, right? And so we're getting stuck there. But what's the intention behind the verbiage that we're using? Let's go a level up. I think that's spot on, dude.
And then that's where, just asking that kind of question, trying to force people to go a level up, that kind of comes back to the default versus intentionality. Because if people can't answer that question, if you say, well, what are you ultimately trying to do? Okay, well, if you're whatever, Republican, Democrat, whatever it is, if you say, well, what do you ultimately want for society? If they can't answer that question, they haven't done the work of actually moving from default to intentionality. They're just stuck in, well, this, my whole family's always believed this.
Yeah.
You know, so hopefully just asking that question, well, what do you think is a positive society? What is a positive community? How does that contribute to it? And if they can't answer that, you hope at least thinking people will go, yeah, do I actually believe this, or am I just living by default? And hopefully that maybe opens some eyes, not to change their mind, but to actually realize that there's some rationale for what they believe versus just saying, nope, I believe that purple is the best color and I don't care what anybody says.
Right. Like,
I better say purple, right? What's that?
I was just saying, like, why is purple your best color? You know, like,
I'm a Bison fan, you know.
Why do you think that? I have a buddy of mine. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say that with a lot of issues, I was like thinking about why, if it's a right or a left issue, why the other side maybe should support that. You know, for example, I've always found interesting that the right wing is supposed to be, you know, small government, personal responsibility, but they're big on drug laws, which seems like big government. There's entire agencies that exist because there's drug prohibition. So if you're small government, you should be pro-legalization because you're small government. And so you always look at the other side and say, why should that? As a discussion about universal basic income and universal health care, which people think of as a left side issue, you know, because it's social, but I'm like, it's an economics issue. How many people would launch a business if they knew that they had some safety net and they didn't have to worry about benefits? So many people would launch businesses, and if 1 out of 50 of those succeed, that 1 out of 50 is going to create 50 jobs and employ the other 49 who didn't make it. But so when people say, oh, I would start a business, but I got a family, I can't lose the health insurance. Right. That's a right-wing issue, not a left-wing issue. But so often people are arguing, you know, you got the left side arguing for that, saying basically, you know, burn the rich, eat the rich, down with the billionaires, and give us universal health care. Well, now you've alienated the people who should agree with you because you're using the rhetoric of your side to support your argument, and instead say, why would the other side like this? You know, why is this also a right-wing issue or also a left-wing issue in addition?
Right. And maybe are there some areas of it that I actually agree with, regardless of which side it is? Oh no, it looks like my battery's going to go to sleep soon. I'm gonna try to stay in here with us. But Mike, you said something. You made me think about a friend of mine. I have a buddy of mine, and we have these kind of like nerding out philosophical, sociological talks all the time because at my core, I guess that's just who I am, and I attract the same. And so he has this saying, guys, that he's training himself to have the knee-jerk reaction that everyone is rational and right thinking based on their circumstances. So he says that he's trying to train himself that when he has a kind of, even if he doesn't express it, when that's his internal response, that kind of clenching or whatever it is, that he's using that as an indicator to be like, okay, pause, that it happened again. Now, everybody's what? Everybody's rational and right based on their experiences. How in the world can that asinine, crazy, nonsensical thing actually make a lot of sense? And that's what you're talking about, Mike. You know, like how can what you just, and that's what you're talking about with the level up. Like if I took it a level up, if I came out of where I was, if I actually wanted to engage this a different kind of way, how does this actually make sense? Everybody's rational and right thinking based on their experiences, so that if I had their experiences, if I came from their part of the town, if I grew up over there, in that part of the country or another part of the world, would I probably, and it's a good chance that the answer is probably yes. So are they really crazy? I love that.
That's the default, right? I mean, it's kind of the same thing, give people a bend for the doubt, but it's, you know, I would expect somebody who grew up in one geographic area to be a very strong Republican. And I would expect somebody who grew up in a different geographic area to be a strong Democrat. Like that's the expectation. It doesn't even mean that they've naturally even thought about it. It's their default. It's the default. default. And I think that's the strength of that default. And I think like I said, try to live intentionally, but also it can go the other way. Like you're saying, when you're putting yourself through the lens of trying to understand somebody, well, that makes perfect sense that they would believe that, given their background, given their experience, and I think just giving people the benefit of the doubt, that we're all trying to figure this thing out, or at least hopefully we're all trying to figure this thing out. That does help keep from that knee-jerk reaction of, I would like to punch them in the face, that sort of thing.
That's how I felt in the back of that Uber, man. Like, it's one thing to say, you guys get it, right? I don't want to.
So Rodney, I'm a poker player as well, and whenever I go play poker, I've got a poker podcast, but I have my headphones in my bag, my backpack. So whenever I'm at the table and I don't want to listen to somebody talk, I can just put those on. I think that could be your trick when you go into an Uber. Always have the headphones there.
I need big ones, like I'm
canceling ones where it's obvious. You put them on.
I don't want
right. Just constantly be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what?" You didn't know.
Right. Hit him. Hold on real quick. What'd you say? Hold on. No. Yeah. Would you? And then it feel bad, like, oh no, I didn't know that you're. Yeah.
It's an introvert's life hack. Yeah. Only one time in my life have I pretended that I was hard of hearing. That was a really desperate time where I had to. But I'm like, I just can't take it. I can't take it.
Yeah. I was at a baseball game doing some sort of outreach for Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Nice.
And helping them recruit mentors and all that kind of stuff. I learned this. I told you, honeybee, right? Honeybee tactic. Get some pollen, drop off some pollen. Here's another one that I've put in my back pocket, right? So I'm going to take this headphones idea. Thank you, Steve. And then Mike, I need big ones like that, right? So here's what I'm going to offer to the table, right? So there was this guy, right, that was coming down the corridor in this stadium. And he's just loudly talking and he's annoying kind of everybody. And I don't know if he's drunk or maybe is there some like cognitive developmental stuff. I don't know. All of the social cues, he's missing all of them, right? Close talking, like everything, right? He's just stepping over. He's the habitual line crossing guy, right? And so he's moving down the way. And this young lady, I believe, this has been years ago. I think her name was Carrie, if I'm not mistaken. But so the guy comes and he stands next to me. So she and I are standing next to each other. And he comes and he goes, well, now I want to ask you the question. Whatever he's talking about, right? And soon as he opens his mouth to get the first utterances out, she goes,
Genius.
Guys, I couldn't stop laughing because I know she don't have allergies. I work with this girl every day, right? This guy was like, yeah, and now that I'm with, she was like, on cue. And she walked away. I don't know where she went. I couldn't talk to the guy because I couldn't pull it together because I saw what happened. But he stayed there and talked to me while I was laughing, like to the back of my head, right?
He'll find somebody else. Yeah, he'll be okay.
He kept going. So yeah, the headphones work, big ones, right? The bigger the better. Really give that social cue, guys. And if all else fails, those allergies, those darn.
That's a good one.
Those gosh darn allergies. Okay, I'm gonna talk to you. I'm gonna finish this conversation. I gotta go, right? I love it.
And it sounds crazy, but like because sometimes you just can't. Some people don't pick up on the social cues like that. You can't just say, you know what, I'm sorry, I've really got a headache, or I've become more honest. Just say, you know what, I'm just really in a place where I just don't want to talk. And so I've been more honest, and most people will respect that, but sometimes they don't. They just keep on talking. So you almost need those little games that you can play. But yeah, I've tried to just be more honest. Maybe because I'm 50 now, I'm just like,
you're like, hey, whatever it is.
If they're offended, it's their problem. And I've lived with this. I'm a long-time people pleaser. So I'm an overcoming, people pleaser. But like, if I say, you know what, I'm sorry, I have a headache, I just don't really want to talk. And if they take offense to that, that's on them. Like I can't own that. And then I've been honest. I don't got to play a game, but sometimes it just doesn't work.
And then, so yeah, well, sometimes it hasn't worked. I was in, I forgot where I was at, but I was in some place. The housekeeper knocked on the door. My heat wasn't working in whatever condo Airbnb situation. So she knocked on the door multiple times to check, like, did maintenance come through, such and such. She was just trying to be great customer service. Well, one of the times I'm literally about to hop in the shower. She comes to the door. I kind of got on the towel. I'm like, hey, no, they're coming. I don't know, right? Like, And she was like, yeah, and another thing. And I'm like, lady, like, I don't know. And I was like, well, I got a presentation to do. I'm going to go ahead and jump in the shower. She was like, yeah, because we need people that do what you do. And another thing. So I should have had an allergy. I needed headphones. I needed all of it. I needed, lady, I don't want to talk. I got to go.
You sneeze into the headphones fall on your face, the whole thing there. Yep. Yeah.
Oh,
yep. Yeah. And so one thing I want to share, kind of tying back to the community thing. So one of the promotional pieces I have for Conference 21 is it says Conference 21 is not just a conference, it's a community, because I found a lot of the virtual conferences were just webinars. You could listen to a bunch of people talk, but might as well be a YouTube playlist for all the interaction there is.
Yeah.
And at least in YouTube you have comments. But I looked at it and said, what do I get out of a conference? It's about that engagement, meeting people, talking, things Steve Beats, the mixers, all the connecting with people. And so I said, how can we reproduce that in the virtual environment? And so we actually have a mixer type space, except that you can absent yourself from a physical group subtly without having to actually walk away. So it's easier to, like, this is my conversation. Whoop. And in fact, I tell people ahead of time, you can just leave. You don't have to say goodbye. You don't have to feel bad. Just click out. Your face disappears. Nobody take offense. I mean, if you're in the middle of a conversation with someone, that's a different thing. But if it's not you, you can off to the next one. But I really wanted to have those kinds of serendipitous connections.
Yeah.
And what I found is I think a lot of the conferences, they try to really curate who's going to be there. They want us to watch an hour of your talks and what are you about and what do you do, and make sure they all fit right together and they're just perfect and they line up and try to match the keywords for the panels and whatnot. And my thought is I think I've created something great by the power of pure laziness. That I don't know what makes a great speaker. I don't know who's going to be a huge draw. I don't know who's going to be great for someone. So I basically look for someone who first off believes they can fill a stage for an hour and has something to offer, and has a good professional presentation and has something of an audience and whatnot. And if they're serious and basically present to me, yes, I'm confident I can put something good on the stage, I bring them in, and I don't worry about what they're going to talk about. And when people say, what do you want me to talk about? I say, I want you to talk about what you want to talk about. Because that's what I want to hear. And I've had speakers who I was like, I don't know how they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know. But, it's a virtual stage, right? It's not like I have to rent an extra room for them. And then I look at the feedback they get in the feedback form afterwards. And everyone in the room gave them their email address, which is, I consider, a 6 on a 1 to 5 scale. Because that's not just they're pretty good. I want to hear more. And they got, 5 out of 5 email, love it. Nothing, it was great. And maybe there's only 2 people in the room, but those 2 people absolutely wanted to meet that person. And then the connections that people make, one of the best benefits that when people ask, like, so what do I get out of being a speaker there? I say you get to meet all the other speakers. It's a community of speakers and knowledge, and it's that random assortment of and I'm really just bringing in everyone, and I'm finding this works with the broader net we cast, the more connections happen, because you never know. And you never know, I really want to get more like science technology stuff. I wasn't able to do it for May as much as I'd like to, but I'd love to get more of that stuff in, even though it doesn't seem to fit the more business theme that we've had. One of our speakers, Angelis Perez, was saying that he's got a lot of geeky friends, physicists and astrophysicists and whatnot. And he'll talk to them and they'll be talking about some physics concept and he'll be like, that will work in that business I'm working with. And they'll be like, what are you talking about? I'm talking about quantum physics. So like, yeah, but that entanglement concept kind of is, the way people work together. And so these totally different things come together. And so basically I took a big pot, poured everything in, stirred it up. And adding,
you belong in Minnesota. We call that a casserole.
A casserole?
Mix it all in there. Hot dish. It's a casserole. It's a hot dish.
Okay, I have an embarrassing question now that we're 50 minutes in.
All right.
Now the judgment can begin. So here we go. Steve, I would love to have a clearer understanding about what it is that an actuary actually does.
Oh, do you know any actuaries?
Yeah, I actually have a buddy of mine. His name is Steve, and no, you're uno nuno, buddy. So
Well, you pronounce it right. That's a good start. So at the end of the day, I mean, actuaries are basically accountants, but without the personality. That's kind of what we are. We're, I think the way to put it, and actuaries do a number of different things, is accountants are really, the financial experts that are looking at what happened. They're reporting on what happened. Actuaries are more forward-looking in terms of they're projecting out. So the most common actuarial role are the folks that set prices for a life insurance policy. So looking at, okay, you're going to buy life insurance. How much should it cost you to get a $100,000 policy? I think we just lost this computer.
Oh no,
so
that's okay. You're recording. You can watch the recording.
So you're projecting out and saying, all right, well, what's the return going to be, but what's the mortality rate at each year, that kind of thing. So that's what a lot of actuaries do, but a lot of analytical stuff. I always try to do non-traditional stuff. So I did a lot of like investment work and that kind of thing, but just a lot of number crunching, a lot of calculus.
So with an actuary, like when you watch poker, oh yeah, you said you're a poker player. Like when you watch poker on TV and it says that the 7 and the 9 offsuit has a 9% chance of winning. Yeah. It's actuaries who figured all that out. Well,
anybody with a statistics background. Yep. So actuaries have a lot of statistics backgrounds. There's a lot of good actuarial poker players. We have a fair amount that are involved in the stuff that I'm doing. So there's a lot of math in poker. But anybody with a basic statistical that's combinatorics and statistics that can tell you, how much equity you have in the hand, your 9% chance of winning or whatever. The interesting thing about poker that I learned is when I first started playing about 10 years ago, it was very math oriented for me and I was getting crushed. And I realized, boy, this is a psychological game. Yeah, the math is a component of it, but this is about playing the other player. It's often not even about what I have. It's what I think they have or what I think they think that I have. And there's all these different levels to poker. So, but yeah, actuaries have been known to crunch those kinds of numbers.
Okay. And so the actuary, that's also for investing to figure out like how to spread your risk across the market. And
yeah. So what I did with, I actually started the first capital markets hedging program at one of these Fortune 500 companies. And basically what we do there is we sell products that have an embedded amount of risk. So if the market goes up, we win. If the market goes down, we lose. And it's not like linear, right? It's all curved and, all of the risk is sort of, functions of different things. And so what we do in the investment world as an actuary is try to mitigate that risk. So if the market goes up, we win on the product. Well, we want to lose by the same amount on the hedge, on our investment side. Or if the market goes down, we lose on the product. We want to win by the same amount there. And so basically it's about buying and selling futures and options and all kinds of equity derivatives so that when China or Japan or Australia, if their market does one thing, we're going to kind of net zero out that risk. So it's spreading the risk. That's kind of like a mortality sort of thing where we say, all right, if we have 1 million people, we know that so many of them are going to die each year. We kind of spread the risk out that way. On the investment side, it's more of just mitigating the volatility in a sense. So that the company doesn't lose a ton of cash or even make a ton of cash. Like my job was like a $35 billion portfolio. And if we actually made money on that portfolio, we did a bad job. Like our goal is net zero, because if we made money, that means we actually were exposed to risk of losing money. So, so from a pure hedging perspective, the goal was to make no money, which is sort of an interesting goal.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's to always make no money, and so why would you put it there instead of putting it in like a bank? Well, I guess you can't put $1 billion in a bank.
Well, so it starts with the products that we sell. So if you sell like variable annuities, and I'm getting into the weeds here a little bit, but as an insurance company, you sell a variable annuity to somebody, which means it's an annuity, but the balance and the benefits are correlated to the market,
right?
And then you put on guarantees. You say, well, you can invest it in the market, but we guarantee you're not going to go down at all. Your balance won't go down over the next period of time. Well, that guarantee is like an option that was purchased. So if the market goes up, the option doesn't pay off. Like they just make their money. But if the market goes down, well, we guaranteed we'd give you this much. So we, as a company, are going to lose that much money. So the products that's already been sold already has this inherent risk. So now the question is, well, how do we mitigate that risk? And so we actually have to buy things that have the inverse relationship to that. So we can't just say, if we leave that money in the bank, we still have that risk exposure. So
Okay,
this
yeah,
is about taking just some of that and saying, all right, let's buy and sell options so that if the market tanks, we're made whole.
fascinating.
It was a fascinating job, very interesting job. I mean, really, the only
Yeah.
day you have off is New Year's Day. It's the only day that every market around the world is closed. So, Christmas morning, 5 a.m, I'd be up in the morning because Japan's open, doing my thing. And so that was part of why eventually I was like, I think I'm good here.
That's a good idea. So before we wrap up, what are you going to be talking about at Conference 21?
Well, I think I'm talking about community building. I should look back at the title there. I think we're
right.
some element of using community building to build a successful organization. So part of that is the intentionality, but really what I've learned is I've done community building my entire life. I never would have called it that. But what I've learned from that is just there are so many principles that apply to building an effective community, whether that's a nonprofit, a hobby group, Fortune 500 group, or whatever. And then what I found is that those same principles are what the best leaders are doing in business. They're actually, instead of just focusing on building a business, they're focused on building a community. And so what I want to talk a bit about is what are those community building principles that you can apply to building your business that are going to help you grow. And I just did a talk about how engagement is something, everybody wants engagement, employee engagement, client engagement, whatever. And when you're building a business, it's sort of an add-on thing, right? We do our stuff, and then, how do we also get engagements? We do these extra things. When you're building a community, that's actually implicit in part of that because the people are central to the community. Mm-hmm. And so if you build it in such a way with the people in mind, you naturally have that engagement. And that engagement drives brand loyalty, it drives employee engagement, it drives retention, it drives all of these things. And so I'm sure I'll talk a little bit about that as part of the conference, but it's part of this broader idea of kind of some of the stuff we talked about a little bit, having intentionality over just selecting the default, making sure we're collaborating, having a culture of authenticity, all of these things that I've learned about building an effective community and how they apply to our business to actually accelerate growth.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you to Rodney. If you're watching from home, thank you. I know he said his battery was going, so I'm sure that's how we lost him. But it's been great. And it's, I gotta say, these roundtables are one of my favorite part of running Conference 21 is getting to host these shows with such great people, such as yourselves. And hopefully you're signed up for a later one. And if not, you should go back on the form and sign up again so we can put you back in the rotation because this was. Right. This was fun.
It's great. I appreciate the opportunity to share, and hopefully we can connect at Conference 21. I'd love to meet a bunch of people out there and hear your story and kind of add to the conversation. But I appreciate it, Michael. I really do appreciate you letting me come along for the ride here.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming along, and thank you folks at home for watching as well.